Hello friends, very good morning to all of you. So today we are going to discuss PF29 part 1, that is authorization code grant. So there are three things we are going to cover this. First we'll try to understand the workflow, how the authorization code flow works, and then we can just jump to PingFederate. We can just do the configuration. Basically we are just going to register the client there. And the third thing, we can just go for the test using Postman. So these three things we can do, and then we can able to understand how to work with the authorization code flow and how to configure in PingFederate. Okay, so let's begin. So in this video, this is PF29 part 1, we can discuss authorization code workflow. So there are three things we can discuss in this video. First, we'll try to understand the workflow of authorization code grant using this diagram as you can see in my screen. The second thing we can discuss is the integration part. We can just go to PingFederate and we can register the client using auth code flow. And the third thing, we can just test that client using Postman. I'll show you that how you can just get the Postman collection, and then you can just run a test and you can able to see how the calls are happening. What we are basically understanding from this workflow, the same thing you can able to understand from the Postman also, and then we can able to see what we are getting in the token and the information. Okay, so yeah, let's begin. So this is a workflow diagram I just prepared using this app.diagrams.net. You can also use this as a very good tool, I will say, to draw the architecture diagram or any flow diagrams also. Here you'll get more options also here. So as you can see in this diagram, I just mentioned the numbering and the arrow mark, dotted line and this line. Okay, so let's try to understand from the beginning. So you can see here that the resource owner, first just I think you are aware of this, right? Resource owner client, and this client is nothing but a server side scripted client, you can say, or the third party application. And you have authorization server, that is in our case it's a PingFederate, which is acting as an authorization server. And then we have the resource server, where basically you can say the user information reside, a kind of thing. Okay, now here this resource owner is just first maybe clicking on login, right? Just went to some application, web application, and trying to click on login, right? So that's why I just draw a diagram here, just pointing one from resource owner to the client. Okay, that's the client software, you can say. Now what client software will do, it will just redirect with HTTP redirect the user to authorization server with some parameter. That's point number 2, you can see. Okay, so the resource owner basically, or the user, you can say, click on login, and then the client software redirects that user from that browser. Okay, that basically the resource owner is using, from that browser to the authorization server with few parameters. And what are those parameters? It's like response type is equal to code, as you can see here. Then you have the client ID, scope, redirect URI, and the state. So response type is equal to code you need to send for this authorization code workflow, and the client ID, that is basically you registered already in the PingFed side. And the scope, which is nothing but we understand like in the scope management, right? It's like about the permissions part. And yeah, based on that you can be able to get the claims. And then the redirect URI is the callback address, where basically the application or the client software just receives the and parse the response like that. Okay, and then you have the state. So maybe I'm not sure whether you all are aware of this parameter or not. So in this authorization protocol, like state is a parameter basically that allows you to restore the previous state of your application. So the state parameter basically preserves some state object set by the client in the this is authorization request, right? And makes it available to the client in the response. So this is authorization request, right? We are talking. So basically in the point number 2, the client or the client software, I will say, redirect resource owner to the authorization server. And when it is going to the authorization server has some endpoints with authorization.auth to something. So you need to send this request to that endpoint only, so that the authorization server can just go for the authorizing the user or the resource owner. So in the authorization server you have different endpoints like token endpoints, authorization endpoint, revocation endpoint, like token validation endpoint that we can say as an introspect. So you have different endpoints. So in this case, like in the HTTP redirect, in the second point, it basically sends a HTTP redirect to the authorization endpoint with all these parameter. And if you remember in the previous session we talked, like I shown you some code like in the in-browser application or also in the native application. So if you can see there, like we have mentioned that like we are basically passing a state parameter in the HTTP redirect in the authorization request, and then we have written a validation of the state, right? That's the purpose of a state. So if you remember that part, like once the code once there is a communication came from the authorization server back to the client is basically, we are just at the client side, we are basically doing the validation that whether it's the same state or it got changed, because state is nothing but a kind of opaque number. And the main purpose of this state is like it's help to mitigate CSRF attacks by using a unique and non-guessable value. As you can see in the state, we put something opaque number. That value basically allows you to prevent the attack by confirming that the value coming from the response matches the one you sent, as we have seen in the code part, like in the previous session. And the state parameter is a string, so you can encode and put just any information in it. You can send a random value when starting an authentication request and validate the received value when processing the response, as we have seen in the previous code. Okay, so basically you are just sending a random value when starting an authentication request and doing the validation when you received the response. Okay, and you store something on the client application side, maybe in cookies, sessions, or you can put in the local storage that allows you to perform the validation. Right, you need to do the validation, so you need to store that in some your local storage or maybe in the cookies or session. Okay, if you receive a response with a state that doesn't match, then you can infer that you may be a target of an attack, because this is either a response for an unsolicited request or someone trying to force the response. Right, that's basically happened in the CSRF attack. So CSRF attack basically specifically targets state changing requests to initiate an action instead of getting user data, because the attacker has no way to see the response to the forged request. For the most basic cases, the state parameter should be a nonce. Nonce is kind of again a kind of opaque number used to correlate request with the response received from the authentication. So just making the correlation between the request and response. And we have seen like how we are doing the validation in the code part in the previous session, right? That's the purpose of state. So with all this parameter, you are going to the authorization server. Now you just hit the authorization endpoint. Now this authorization server, like which is in our case it's a PingFederate, just send a user to the login and authorization prompt page. That means like user can get a login page, kind of HTML form, enter the ID and password, and then it will complete that part. Once that part is done, that we have highlighted in the point number 3, user will send to the 4, that is consent. Consent means like you are asking the kind of approval from the resource owner to perform some action. Or you can understand consent in a very easy way. I think we all are just using the like smartphone, right? Whether it's Android or iOS. So if you have seen that, like when you're just sorry, when you're installing or downloading any kind of application, you can see the application is asking a consent from you, like to access your data, like to access your contacts, to access your photos that present in the gallery. So that application is requesting you to give that consent. So once you are approving that consent, then only that application able to access your data. So it's a kind of the same thing happening here also. So consent is nothing but a permission or approval the client software is asking from the resource owner, and once it is done, then yeah, it can just perform the action. So consent is nothing but a scope, like in the scope what you are passing. So like consent is just like as per the scope, as per the permission what you have sent, it basically work on that and just ask for the approval from the resource owner, as I have said, I just told in the example, right? The application we are downloading in the phone. So once this step is done, third and fourth, then from authorization server there is a temporary, like authorization server basically will generate a temporary authorization code and then send to the resource owner browser to the client software. So in this like communication, you can see like from client to the authorization server, this is happening through browser only. So that's, we can say this as a front channel communication. We already discussed what is front channel communication, what is back channel, right? So this is a front channel communication. Now once the client software receive that temporary authorization code, basically it parses that authorization code because it received at the callback address of the application. Now once this step is done, now it's a time for the token call. So as you can see, I put in the dotted line, right? Dotted line here, it's basically presenting or displaying a back channel communication. So it's basically browser is not coming, it's a direct call. Like from the client software application, there is a direct call, or you can say there is a back channel communication going to the token endpoint of this authorization server. So authorization server have token endpoint. So the client software is just sending the direct call to the token endpoint with all these parameters like client ID, client secret, authorization code, and the redirect URI. So authorization code that basically it received in this in the fifth point, you can see. So just adding the same authorization code, then redirect URI, then client ID, client secret. Once that authorization server receives this information, it can just it's a basically HTTP post call. Okay, here is HTTP get and it's the HTTP post call. So authorization part is the HTTP redirect, or you can say HTTP get, just like you are redirecting from the URL itself, and then it's a HTTP post call where you're adding the information in the header and then passing it to the authorization server token endpoint. After that, like this authorization server will just issue a token, access token to the client, as you can see here. And once you receive an access token, then client can simply use that access token to, as you can see here, like in the point number 8 I just highlighted. So once the client receive an access token, it can simply just send that access token to the resource server so that it can access the API to fetch the user information, the resource owner information. So it's trying to fetch the user information, so it can simply use that access token and then just call to the resource server API by passing that token in the header information, and then get the user information, who the user is and all those things. And this is also a back channel communication. So in the auth code flow, you can see you have a back channel communication, you have the front channel communication. You have basically in this flow diagram, you can see you have basically three important calls. First call, you are sending HTTP get or redirect to the authorization server to the authorization endpoint, and then you are getting authorization code from authorization server. Then the second is a token call, which is a basically back channel communication, where you are passing few parameters like client ID, secret, authorization code, redirect URI, that's a callback address, and then you are getting a token. That's the second call happened. Once that, I'll not say second, basically second, there are three phases I will say. First is the authorization phase, second is the token phase, and the third phase you are utilizing that token to access some API, that is a resource, basically resource server API, to get the information of the user. So that's the third phase of this workflow diagram. So there are three things are happening in this, and it's a very straightforward thing. So what we can do now, we can just create a connection in PingFederate. Okay, like we can just go to PingFed and we can register a client using authorization code workflow, and then we can just do a test in Postman, and Postman will act as our client here, right? So once we go to the Postman is acting as our client, and then Postman will just handle this complete part. It will send a like a request from the resource owner, basically will try to access from Postman. So Postman will just redirect a user to the authorization server, and then it can just, what we discussed, just basically just authenticate, and then it will just look for the it will just look for that validation part, the token generation part once it returns a code. So same thing what we discussed, we can just try to test in the Postman, and Postman will act as a client. Okay, so let's jump to that registration part of client in PingFederate, and then we can jump to the test part. Okay, now we have already created a token manager and the access token mapping, if you remember, and also we have created the policy contract grant mapping, if you remember. So this part I think we covered in the OAuth implementation. So this is done. Now let's quickly go to the application and go to OAuth, and then you have the client. Okay, so here we can create a register our client using auth code workflow. Okay, so let me click on add client. It will just ask few information, so just let's give here and before that just let me see the policy what we have. Okay, I think we have the policy 3 extended in the priority 1, and there we have the value as composite open DJ and the HTML from SUPCV. So let me go to the selector section and I'll copy the open DJ value. Yeah, EPAS extended property, and we have the open DJ. Yeah, so that like this is going to handle the authentication. Okay, we can use the same extended property policy for our OAuth also. Okay, it's not like you need to create a separate for that. Okay, so let's go back to the OAuth again and let's go add client. Just mention the client ID as it should be good if you can put some opaque number like so that it can't be guessable easily. But for now, let's give something as a name, like we can put auth code flow. Just put the same name there also. We can keep this information like in some place for now, so that we can enter in. Okay, now yeah, so description, leave this option. Client authentication, here you have the option as a none, secret JWT, then you have the client TLS certificate, then private key JWT. We need to understand this part, what is this JWT, client TLS and private key JWT. I have already planned a session for this, but for now for auth code flow we need a client secret, so we can go for the client secret. Okay, none we can use for the PKC, we'll understand talk more in the PKC section. Okay, so we have chosen the secret. Now we need a client secret, so you can just click on this option, change secret, and then you'll get an option of generate secret, right? So just click on that and now you have the client secret is ready. So you can copy this and keep it somewhere. Okay, now let's go back. Client secret retention period, use global setting. Okay, leave this because yeah, maybe definitely we need to have a plan how we can manage the client secret, right? Whether we need to expire it maybe in some time, or we can just give it globally, or we can just put in something sometime, like maybe it can be active for a longer time. Yeah, leave that option for now. Required push authorization request, leave. JWT security authorization, no, not required. Signed request, not required. Object signing algorithm, put allow any, that's fine. JWKS URL, no need to give anything. Redirect URI we can give here. So where is that redirect URI? We can give the Postman, because yeah, in our case Postman is the client software which we are going to test. So I'll give the Postman callback address. Let's add it. Okay, now you have the logo URL. If you have anything, just give for the application or leave it. Now you have these options like allow authentication API, redirect mode, not required, bypass authorization approval. So we can click on bypass. Bypass means like if you bypass this, then you are basically just skipping the that part, like consent part. Okay, so consent is basically required when you have some permission you need to ask from the user, resource owner, right? But in our case we are not supposed to go for that. So let's skip that, and we can click on the bypass authorization approval, so that it can just skip that option and it can just go with the default permission. Okay, and exclusive scope, restrict common, leave these options. Allow authorization detail types, allow authorization details not required. Allowed grant type. Now grant type you need to enable. Which grant we are talking? So we are talking here for the authorization code workflow. Okay, so let's enable that and then go for the next. Require offline access scope to issue refresh token. You just put global setting, that's fine. Restrict response type not required. Default access token manager, yeah, so we have already created token manager, so I'll choose test ATM. That's we created in the OAuth implementation section. Restrict to default access token manager, no need to restrict. Validate against eligible access token manager, leave these options, we don't need. Require PKC proof key for code exchange, we are not testing here in this case, leave this option. Persistent grant max lifetime, put use global setting. A persistent grant idle timeout, leave use global setting here also. And then you have what else is left? Reuse existing persistent access grant for grant types. Okay, that's fine. Refresh token rolling policy, that's fine, leave this. Refresh token rolling interval, yeah, leave it. Refresh token rolling rest period in seconds. Yeah, you can just give this default option, right? Now OpenID connect is not required because we are not going for the OIDC thing. Okay, We are not testing that OpenID Connect, we are just testing only the auth. So you can leave these options for now as it is. Session API endpoints, leave this. JWT secured authorization response mode, okay, leave this, not required. Demonstration proof of a position DPOP, okay, leave this. Okay, now let's go for next. Okay, it will ask for the risk level extended properties value, so we can give so that it can just handle the authentication part, how we are doing in the SAML. If you remember, same thing we need to apply here also. So just give like the value as HTML form OpenDJ, so that it can just pick this, authenticate the user using that adapter that we have. Okay, now let's save this. Okay, so, and I think what it says, use the built-in HSQLDB only in trial or training environment, always use security. Okay, if you remember, yeah, like we discussed this, like you need to have some external database or external source where you can store the grants. By default, like you have the HSQLDB, the internal database that Ping is giving to you, but it is only recommended for the training environment as it is mentioning here. Okay, so if you're having a QA production, you need to definitely use some external database as a Oracle database or kind of Ping directory, anything you can use where you can store the grants. Okay, the token part basically. Okay, this looks good, and let's do one thing, like let's go to cluster management. I'll just check that whether we have that enabled, completed or not. Replicate, I think it's already succeeded, I think. Yeah, okay, it's fine. So now let's test using Postman, and then yeah, we can so let's quickly do a test. I think Postman is already open, I think. Yeah, so I just basically just downloaded this Postman desktop application. Once it is downloaded, you can just sign in with your Gmail account or any kind of whatever account you have, and then just bring the Postman collections. Okay, how you can bring that, like you can just simply just go to PingFed OAuth endpoints, and you will get some website. I'll put this in the description also, in the comment section, in the description section also. You can just use this URL, and then you can get the PingFed OAuth collections. Just you can download this, just you have an option of export. It will be exported in the JSON format, and then just go to your Postman and you'll get an option of import, right? So just click on import, and then you are able to just import that, just put that file, JSON file, and click on import, so that collection will come inside your the Postman desktop app. You can see I have like Okta collections, I just put it here. Okay, and then I have the collections for the Okta, like users and the PingFederate Ping directory, other things also I have. So you can just bring the collection like this, and then you can just test. It will be very easy for you. Okay, so as you can see, we have the PingFed OAuth endpoint collection now, and then just click on OAuth token request, expand this, and then you have the user authentication, expand that, and then you have the authorization code grant. Okay, so here you have the option of the get Postman code flow with the no browser. Okay, so we can go with this only. Okay, we are not going to if you go with the browser, then what means that you will just redirect to the browser where you will enter the ID and password like that. Otherwise it can be handled in the Postman only. Okay, once you just enter, you can see there is an authorization tab here. Just go it here, and then you can just expand this. Sorry, yeah. So now you just need to feed some values here. So first thing, like you can just put a token, token name, it should be something. So just you can put something like auth code test. Okay, grant type, here you can choose authorization code only, because we are testing authorization code only. Callback address, you can just give, you can just define the environment also, and you can bring all these values also. We can discuss later in the Postman, like no need to just enter like manually these things. You can define in the environment, and it can pick it from there. So you can define the environment where you can define the client ID, secret, callback address, everything. Okay, and then you can pick it from there. Now you have the HTTPS URL as authorization.auth2. So the URL here you need to give like the base URL. Okay, so if you can go to PingFederate, what you have the base URL, just go to system and then go to server. You can see you have the base URL as HTTPS 10.128.0.4:9031. So you need to go back here and just define it there in the URL section. Okay, so here you can just give it, sorry, 2 times HTTPS came out. Okay, HTTPS 10.128.0.4:9031 AS authorization.auth2. This is basically a authorization endpoint address. Okay, and then give same thing for the token also. The base URL will be same for PingFederate. So you have the authorization endpoint, you have the token endpoint. Now just define the client ID that we have copied, and then we can give the client secret. Scope is not required because we are not like enable that option here in our case. So just give the client ID, okay, as a auth code flow. Go back to the Postman, give the client ID, then you can give the client secret. Okay, now state, you can pass something or you can leave it also. Okay, not required in our case, or you can pass some random opaque number like 1 2 3 4 5, anything like that. And then client authentication send as a basic authentication header, or you can just choose client credential in the body. So we can choose as a send as a basic authentication header. Okay, that's fine. So just you need to fill the values like this: client ID, secret, callback address, token endpoint, auth endpoint, so that the postman can able to call to those addresses for different purposes. Like if in our case, we are just going to first authorization call with the parameter like client ID, redirect URI, and then we'll get a temporary authorization code from the PingFederate, and then postman will go for the token call with the backchannel communication. Okay, using client ID, client secret, and the redirect URI, the callback address. So just fill the details like this in the postman, and then just go for the option get new access token. So just click on get new access token. Once you click, you should get a login page, right? So just enter the same ID and password what you have, like 1 second. Yeah, for the OpenDJ, if you remember what is the ID and you have the information. Let me check. I think I just put it somewhere. Yeah, I think OpenDJ user details I have, because I'm not able to remember right now what are the credentials we have. OpenDJ, yeah, we can give username Abhishek. Yeah, we can test this also. Yeah, Abhishek arts 211@identity.com. This is one of the user we have. Okay, and the password is also same. So let's go to the postman, back to the postman, and then enter the username and password. This is basically authorization call. Okay, that the second call we talked in the flow diagram, and then the there will be an exchange of authorization code, and then through backchannel we'll just go for the token call from postman. Click on sign on. Okay, it says failed, authentication failed. Why it failed? You can just go to the console and have a look. So it says object. So just enable the get request and let's see that. Yes, authorization.auth2 response type is equal to code and client ID auth code redirect URI something. Yeah, this looks fine. I don't see any problem here. The post call, this is a basically post call happened. So it says object is basically coming when you have some incorrect information, but I don't think there is any issue with authentication here. Authentication done with the correct information. Error is equal to server error. Yeah, location. So this part what we had added, the information looks to be fine for me. Okay, so here we have the logs PingFederate. Let's go to the log folder. let's open the audit log. And let's go to bottom. So what it says here, you can see authentication has happened here. Okay, there is no any issue there. You can see the same transaction ID. Okay, so IDP success means authentication done, but after that there is an issue in token generation, and what it says, it's get failed, and the issue is says mapping into unique user key resulted in null or empty value from source attributes. It says mapping into unique user key resulted in null or empty value from source attribute. That means like the unique user key value, the place where we have done the mapping, it's getting null. Let's do one thing. Let me come out from here. Let's go back again to the PingFederate and let's have a check on the access token mapping, access token management. I think these things will be fine. So in access token mapping we have the, let's open this. Yeah, we have the mapping with the APC, phone number, email, first name, group, last name, SUB, username. Yeah, this is fine. If we can check the policy contract, let's go to auth policy contract grant mapping, PF learning to persistent grant contract. So here we have added the data store, and then we have the user key, username as the mail from LDAP. Okay, let's check the Postman again if there is any mistake we are doing there, because those things looks fine. So you can see again, it's just in the case of SAML, we are doing some troubleshooting also, right? So it's kind of troubleshooting also we are doing, correct? So if the things will be straightforward, then maybe we are not supposed to go and check those all things. But if something is going wrong, so it's good for you while you are learning. So if you have some if there is any mistake, or if you just did any error anywhere, you'll get to learn something new. You can just go and check the logs, you can check the configuration, you will learn some new thing, and maybe you can understand, okay, these are the maybe the problems can come later also. So it looks good. Let's verify the Postman again. Token name, grant type, callback address, auth URL https 9031/as authorization.auth2. This looks fine. Let's check the access token URL https 10.128.0.4:9031. Okay, yeah, you can see there is a slash missing here. Okay, sorry. Okay, this token address looks to be wrong. Okay, so 9031/as/token.auth2. Yeah, now the token URL looks fine. Client ID, client secret, everything is fine. Okay, now let's try again. Clear the cookies, get new access token. Let's put ID and password again. Sorry, let me copy the username. Let's put a password. Let's click on sign on. Let's go back to Postman. Okay, still says authentication failed. Object. The object. Let's go back to check again the logs. Yeah. Let me open the audit log again. So one error we found, right? We found one thing, that there is a slash missing in the token address in the Postman, but still we can see there is a failure message with the new transaction ID. It came, there's a new request. Mapping into unique user key resulted in null or empty value from source attribute. This basically error is coming from the our persistent grant, like the policy contract grant mapping we did. So let's go back there only. That definitely there is one error that we have resolved in the Postman, that the token address is wrong, so we have updated this. Now let's go back to the connection again, and let's go to authentication, go to auth, open policy contract grant mapping. So we have added the data store, right? So let's do one thing. Click on attribute sources and user lookup and remove this LDAP. Okay, now go to next. You have user key, username, choose a source as a APC. Okay, and here you can choose a value as a You have phone number, last name, group, first name, email, subject, username. Choose here username. Okay, user key source as a APC and the value is username. Okay, let's go to next. Let's save this. So we have made the change in the policy contract grant mapping. Okay, let me cross verify it's got changed or not. Okay, a user key and username mapped as a username as a source APC and the value is username. Let's go to Postman again and now let's clear the cookies. You can clear the cookies directly from here and you have the code snippet option here. Okay, you can see from Postman here, like this is the code snippet where you have the different program language like Go, Native, HTTP, Java, PHP, PowerShell, Python, R, Shell, different language you can get. So yeah, you can able to see your the request, the way you are sending to from Postman in the code snippet also. Okay, we can see later also. Let me copy the username information. Okay, let's click on get new access token. Let's put a username, let's put a password, let's click on sign on. Okay, great, it worked. You can see authentication completed and you can click on proceed and you can get an access token. So yeah, maybe there are two mistakes we found. One in the token address, that slash is missing, and yeah, the policy contract grant mapping we need to just modify that. Okay, so you have the access token, you have the token type bearer, expires in access token underscore UI URL, client ID, client secret, grant type, and all this information you can see timestamp. Okay, now you can able to decode this also. Okay, what is this token? So if you can just copy this access token, this is JSON web token. Okay, that's the type of access token we have here. You can just copy this and you can close this and then go to the browser and then you can just go to jwt.io and you can able to decode that also. There are other places also you can decode, not only in jwt.io, but yeah, we can use this. Control A, Control V, and then you can able to see few information here. Let me minimize this, my screen size. Okay, now you can see this. First you can see the header type in this token, that is basically algorithm, KID and the pi.atm. Okay, this is the ATM signing X50 insert, the name of the certificate we put in the PingFederate. Okay, and the algorithm and the pi.atm, that is a header part. Then you have the payload, which talks about a scope, which is nothing we have given. Client ID, auth code flow, issuer is PingFederate learning. Okay, we have given this in the access token manager. I'll show you. If you can go to this place and then go to auth and go to access token management, go to test ATM, you can see we have just go to instance configuration, scroll down and you can see you have given, go to advanced field and then you can see, yeah, issuer claim value, you have given PingFederate learning, right? So from here it's picking that. Let's go back. So you have the issuer, JTI, you have the sub, that is SUB value, first name, phone number, groups, email, last name, username, expiry, and then you have the verify signature. Okay, yeah, it says invalid signature. It's fine. It's JWT is complaining. Okay, because JWT is not having the the key to verify this JWT. Okay, so yeah, this looks fine. And algorithm, yeah, this is a decoded format you can see in JWT, header, payload and signature part, and yeah, so this looks good. And now we can jump to PKC. So in this video we have understand the workflow. I hope you understand that. Then we just discussed that we have registered the client at PingFederate with authorization code grant, and then we have tested using Postman. I hope you understand these three things. If you have any confusion, you can please put in the comment section. We can discuss in the next video. Okay, now let's jump to the PKC flow. Thank you.